When his mother gave birth to him, she thought that the little baby boy's head was so big and misshapen that it was deformed. The back of the head, in fact, seemed much too big, and the family initially considered him a monstrosity. When the grandmother saw her little grandchild for the first time, she muttered continuously, "Much too fat, much too fat." However, despite all apprehensions, the boy grew up normally, even if he seemed a bit slow.
At the age of 5, while he was sick in bed, his father showed him something that sparked his interest in science, a pocket compass. What interested him was, wherever the object was turned, the needle always pointed in the same direction. This made him wonder that there must be some force in what was presumed empty space that acted on the compass.
During his childhood, he spoke very rarely, and the seldom times he did, it was very slowly. Indeed, he tried out entire sentences in his head, or muttered them under his breath, until he got them right before he spoke aloud. Because of that, for his first 9 years of life, his parents thought he was retarded.
When he was 17, he applied for early admission into a prestigious university, passing the math and science sections with the highest scores, but failing the history, language, and geography parts. He had to retake the exam to be admitted a year later.
Once inside the school, it remains famous his argument with one of the faculty members. The university professor of his class, in fact, challenges students with this question: Did God create everything that exists? One of the students in his class bravely replied, "Yes, he did." "God created everything?" the professor asked.
"Yes, sir," the same student replied.
The professor answered, "If God created everything, then God created evil, since evil exists. And according to the principle that our works define who we are, then God is evil."
The student became quiet before such an answer. The professor was quite pleased with himself and boasted to the students that he had proven once more that Christian faith was a myth. At this point, the boy of the story raised his hand and said, "Can I ask you a question, Professor?"
"Of course," replied the professor.
He stood up and asked, "Professor, does cold exist?"
What kind of question is this? Of course it exists. Have you never been cold? The student snickered at the young man's question.
The young man replied, "In fact, sir, cold does not exist. According to the laws of physics, what we consider cold is reality, the absence of heat. Every body and every object is subject to the sturdy when it has a transmitted energy, and heat is what makes a body or matter have a transmitted energy. Absolute zero is the total absence of heat. All matter becomes inherent and incapable of reacting at the temperature. Cold does not exist. We have created this world to describe how we feel if we have too little heat." The boy continued, "Professor, does darkness exist?"
The professor responded, "Of course it does."
When the young man replied, "Once again you are wrong, sir. Darkness does not exist either. Darkness is reality, the absence of heat. Light we can study, but not darkness. In fact, we can use Nimson prism to break white light into many colors and study the various wavelengths of each color. You cannot measure darkness. A simple wave of light can break into a world of darkness and limit it. How can you know how dark a certain space is? You measure the amount of light present. Isn't this correct? Darkness is a term used by man to describe what happens when there is no light present." Finally, the young man asked the professor, "Sir, does evil exist?"
Now uncertain, the professor responded, "Of course, as I have already said. We see it every day. It is in the daily example of man's inhumanity to man. It is in the multitude of crime and violence everywhere in the world. These manifestations are nothing else but evil."
To this the boy replied, "Evil does not exist, sir, or at least it does not exist into itself. Evil is simply the absence of God. It's like coldness and darkness, a word that man has created to describe the absence of good. God did not create evil. Evil is not like faith or love that exists just as does light and heat. Evil is the result of what happens when man does not have God's love present in his heart. It's like the cold that comes when there is no heat, or the darkness that comes when there is no light."
The professor sat down. The young man's name, Albert Einstein.